Good evening, everybody, and it's Lilia and Jonathan here from the Health Hub. Jonathan, how you doing?
Hello there. Good evening, Lilia. I'm doing well, thanks.
Awesome, awesome. So tonight we are going to talk about, well, I suppose a little bit about the reasons why you can get sick, but also about prevention. And obviously, at the Health Hub, Jonathan and I, being in the more mature, wise age bracket, we're very keen to help people with issues that come along as the body gets older. But obviously, we understand that the biotherapies that are available at the Health Hub are absolutely phenomenal for sports people, for injuries, and for, of course, prevention, which most of us don't really think about. I mean, I was joking with you before we went live about why did you not open this place 60 years ago? But,
That would
you
have
know,
been about the right timing, actually. Yeah.
yeah. So if we, with the benefit of hindsight, can look back on, how our health pictures developed, and obviously when you go to the doctor, there's usually only two kind of options. Either you get to see a specialist, or you get an operation, or maybe a prescription. And we're now understanding that for a lot of issues, that's just not enough. So, do you want to start, Jonathan, with your own kind of personal story in terms of your health and what
Sure.
maybe could have been done differently?
Sure. Well, I suppose I was my tender years going back the sort of time frame you referred to. Days of a student. You know nothing, but in those days, one beer was good and two beers were even better, kind of thing, and so it went on. But there's been a big change since my 20s and so on, but in the food industry. So I think that's something to look at. And certainly some of the things that have come to the fore, to which have made keeping healthy nowadays really difficult, is the change to the food industry and the concerted effort by the food industry to structure food and things in a way that makes it absolutely irresistible. So, and I'm talking about, they have a term called the bliss curve, which is they match the sugar and the fat and the salt content till it absolutely peaks you. But the problem with that kind of food is it's got almost zero nutrition. So, and the result of that is that at a cellular level, we still feel hungry. So we eat some more of it. And so it goes on. As you get older, of course, it gets more difficult to move a tummy. And so when you're young, you manage to burn it off quite a lot. And that's fine. But really, I think our health trajectory starts way back. And if I look at my own situation, I didn't eat exceptionally a lot. I hardly touch desserts, but I would eat plenty of potatoes and starchy stuff. So yes, but I wasn't exceptional anyway, and I think the food then was generally a lot safer, shall I put it that way? And of course, the toxicity levels in the world have increased enormously, with literally tens of thousands of new chemicals in our environment, in our drinking water, and so on. So we've got multiple fields of issues here. And I suppose I first became aware of the fact that I had some health issues. I've always, since my 30s, I've always been overweight. And I got to a point where I went to see a nurse, and I think I was around 50 or something. Routine check, did my blood test. She said, "Oh, I think you're pre-diabetic." So I said, well, I wasn't expecting this. And so she explained, look, this is a progressive thing, diabetes. There's no cure for it. It just gets worse. And you'll end up taking a tablet. And when one tablet stops, you'll be on two tablets. And then when that doesn't work, you'll then be on insulin. And there are quite a lot of diabetic type 2, that would be type 2 diabetes. Quite a lot of people who indulge in things that they know are going to set their blood sugars going crazy. And but they have the notion that if they just take more insulin, they can deal with it. But that leads on to the background of this, which is probably insulin resistance, which is something which anyone who's sort of middle-aged, got a bit of a tummy, is probably on the foothills of insulin resistance. And I very much was just there. Fortunately, I managed to read up that there were people who were reversing their type 2 diabetes. And it's worth pointing out that about the estimates are, and I know this is an American figure, but I'm sure the UK is not far behind. There's about 60% of the population are either pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic or undiagnosed, one of those two things. So it's a massive epidemic. It's a giant proportion, and as an industry, the managing blood sugar is a multi-billion-dollar industry, so a big issue. So anyway, I'm not on medication now for that, but I did manage to reverse out of that. But I always carried a lot of weight, and I think the damage had been done. And I eventually ended up having a heart attack about 10 years ago. Fortunately, not a very big heart attack, as heart attacks go, but it really made me stop and think about lifestyle. I managed to make some changes. I got some stents put in at the time. And when something like that happens and it's not a fatality, which many times it could be, then it's a big wake-up call, isn't it? So that's how I kind of became aware of things, and that really the things, alcohol was probably one of the issues. The thing about alcohol is it's not that a modest amount of alcohol is apparently not so bad for your gut biome, although it can't help it particularly. But what it does is it preoccupies the liver trying to detox you. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that while the liver's busy dealing with the alcohol, it apparently it prevents the liver making glucogen. So if you've been out on a bit of a bender, it's very often to get the munchies at the end of that, and then the next stop is a chip shop, and you finish off the evening with that. At least that's what used to happen years and years ago. So it's a problem, but it's a manageable problem if you know what's going on.
Well, exactly. There's Laura. Hi, Laura. Yeah, I think exactly that. For me, it was obviously, I mean, culturally, Scottish people, we just go out and drink at the weekends. That was a given. But I know when I was younger and I had my kids, nobody drank wine. You would go out and you didn't drink in the house by yourself. You would, that just would never have happened.
Yeah.
You went out with your pals, but obviously you probably binged, not probably, did binge. But then definitely the quality of the food, I don't know if you've read that book, Ultra Processed People. I mean, it's exactly what you were saying about this bliss point. When the tobacco companies started to fail, they just moved over to food. And they realised by that time, if they can make you addicted to things, they've got a customer for life. And, it's terrible to think that other humans could do stuff like that when they know it's not for your greater good. But that's the reality. And now that our food systems have been completely destroyed, and thanks to Jane and Steve over at the Good Food Project for really trying to redress that issue, for getting us unpoisoned quality food. But yeah, I mean, we could go on and on and on. And I mean, I know when my friend Rachel and I were doing the Gerson therapy, the reason it took so long and it was so expensive was because, well, you had to distill all your water to get the chemicals out of it. You had to soak all your vegetables to try and get as much of the poisonous, carcinogenic glyphosate off of it if you couldn't get organic. So all your time was spent undoing the things that man has done to food, and for greed a lot of the time as well. But let's look at, so if we look at and obviously the depletion of the topsoil, as we've used all these pesticides and different fertilizers, etc., in the soil, that is Zach Bush calls it, is the microbiome of the earth. And that's, if the soil is not phenomenal, then the plants that are growing in the soil and the vegetables are not going to give us what we used to get even like 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Is it that a leek which you buy in a grocery shop today lacks the nutrition that it used to have? It's not obvious. So the problem, as you rightly point out, is at cellular level. We can't see it. I mean, people, we talked about toxins. People are putting things on their skin, unaware that everything goes on your skin eventually goes into your system. So some of the advice was, well, don't put anything on your skin which you wouldn't consider eating. So sorry, I interrupted you, but Lilia, but
That's exactly right. And I think, it's all these small changes in a fairly short period of time means that the body is now not being fed at that cellular level. And interestingly enough, I had done the voice print on my daughter, and I said to her, you need to stop wearing all that perfume. It's showing up on your biofield. And of course, she wasn't
really,
interested. She likes perfume. She was like, I don't care. And
yeah,
then when she got HRT, you spray it on your skin, and suddenly it dawned on her, right, if this is going in and helping my hormones, what is the perfume doing when you spray it straight,
yeah,
literally? I mean, these things were just never designed to be inside the body. And all the body products and the heavy metals that can be in there, by the time you go to work in the morning with your shower gel, your shampoo, your facial wash, your mouthwash, and all the body creams and makeup, etc., you can have put hundreds of chemicals in your body without even realizing it. And
yeah,
if that's on day after day, the body's incredible. I always say this. It's a miracle we're all still alive. Because I think Hippocrates said, commit enough daily sins against nature and you will experience dis-ease. And, we're committing so many daily sins against nature. The food's not the way that God gave it to us. The water's not the way God gave it to us. The light's not the way. We've got fake everything, fake lighting. And what the bodies, you can see now with the levels of chronic degenerative disease, which is absolutely completely unnecessary once you understand. So,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I was thinking just that, half the country goes to work with packed lunch sandwiches and things, and a regular sliced loaf now, it's got preservatives in it, which is why a slice of bread is still seems fresh, seems got no mold on it, it's widgy, and it's still, you can still use it, you can spread on it and things, and make a sandwich from it. But it's only that way because it's got preservatives. And guess what? The preservatives don't die just because you've eaten them. They go in and attack your gut biome. And so that's happening every time you take preservatives. And it's almost impossible to avoid it. So, yeah. So,
yeah, bread is a biggie because most people in the UK have bread twice a day, usually bread in the morning and then bread again at lunchtime. And very often that one simple taking that out can drastically improve your health and your weight. And similar to you, when I was, going back to the blood sugar issue, because my friend Donal, who made 4 documentaries around the food pyramid and fat versus sugar and how fat was demonized and sugar wasn't, sugar was secretly added to everything. His documentaries, showed quite clearly that fat, don't fear fat. One of the documentaries was called that. And he said that probably one of the most basic ways to look at your health and your aging process is unstable blood sugar. If your blood sugar's unstable, then you're going to age faster. And so when it happened to me, obviously I never expected to even be anywhere near type 2 diabetes, and my blood sugar started. It was one night my kids were in. Nikki was doing the ketogenic diet, so we had the blood sugar thing out, and theirs were all like 4 point something, and mine was 8, and I was like, "What?" Because I had no idea. Right? This was obviously post menopause. I hadn't realised that that's really common after menopause. Of course, it's obvious when your hormones start to change. You have to eat different foods, but that wasn't obvious to me at the time. And that whole idea that type 2 diabetes is a disease, when in actual fact your hormones are changed, if you don't rebalance them with food, you're going to have a problem.
yeah,
And to turn that into a dis-ease is just, it's really downright
yeah,
criminal.
scary.
Because once you understand, right, okay, I wore one of these things on my arm so that I could start to see, because I know that grains can push blood sugar up, especially for blood group O, which I am. So the grains, obviously porridge and stuff like that, isn't really a healthy food for me, not unless it's loaded up with MCT oil and nuts and seeds. So it's really important to educate yourself on what is spiking your blood sugar and what isn't. And also, I mean, I knew there was never a chance I was going on any meds for it, but also I just hadn't realised that my blood sugar was slowly creeping up. So I got it before it got, into that kind of pre-diabetes stage.
Yeah.
And it's a really simple, cheap thing to do to keep an eye on
Yeah.
what your sugar's doing. Because obviously when you get that inflammation caused often by sugar and crappy grains, that's when you become the cesspit for disease. The microbiome it gets too hot in there and critters move in that are not meant to be moving in there.
Yeah. Lilia's big on critters, aren't you, Lilia? Anyway, that's a whole another exciting chapter. Where the thing is about sugar sensitivity and insulin resistance is that there's no obvious symptoms, especially in the early days, and unless you measure it with a meter of some sort in the morning, fasted before you eat or drink anything, you won't know that you have a problem. And in the UK, you should be below number 6. Lilia was saying she was an 8, and other people are 4.5, which you want to be somewhere between 5 and 6 would be ideal. In America, that number would be 100. I forget the units that the Americans use just now. But anyway, so you find that out, and then you realize, hold on, I'm edging up, and I'm not down below. At night, everything should kind of reset a bit. And if you're high in the mornings before you've had breakfast, it's definitely a wake-up call. And for something like 25 quid, you can buy a glucose monitoring kit. I've been shocked how many people I know who are seriously overweight have been to their GP and they've not been automatically checked for their blood sugars. And maybe that just, I don't know why that is, but it is a real shame, because anyone who's got a bit of a tummy and who's over 40 is probably on that slippery slope, as we mentioned. So worth thinking about, because if you can get on it now, or when you're in your 30s or 40s or even your 50s, it's never too late. You can save yourself doing a lot of damage. And insulin turns out to be a vital hormone, but it's a vicious hormone. It's a fat storing hormone. So if you eat carbs, and carbs just turn to sugar, so bread and starch and potatoes and rice and pizza all turn into sugars. If you didn't know that already, most people do. But it just means that your excess calories go straight on as fat. And the first thing the body uses for fuel is the carbohydrates, because they're very easy to get to, easy fuel, which is why the nation's fed on sandwiches and bread and cereal, cornflakes and things. So that is the problem. And insulin grabs hold. It's a fat storing hormone, as stated, but it grabs hold of other hormones in your body. So, for example, your testosterone and your estrogen end up getting grabbed by insulin and packed away in your fat cells. So, really, a tummy with fat on it is a metabolically active organ, and that is the thing that most people just never even realize. And it gets very much more difficult to lose that tummy as you get older, as I can vouch for.
Well, I remember somebody asking me about the menopausal middle. This is before I had the menopause, and I was like, "What a lot of rubbish!" And then it happened to me. I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Wrapped around my belly, and I was like, "No, I'm not having that." And that's when I realized, all right, you need to have. I can basically have far less carbs now than I could before I went into the menopause, and I think that's the case. Women, it's really obvious because we have that menopause and everybody knows that your hormones change then. But I think for me, almost like my digestive enzyme, kind of, and also just wear and tear of the digestive system. We don't have this maybe the same amount of life and to break down the food, and we don't have the enzymes there anymore. And so the food is, the carbs, just the body just stores them in cells that look like fat. So it's trying to do us a favour to put them somewhere safe.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I
Sorry.
Professor Tim Noakes, he was on one of my friend's documentaries, and he said, if your carbohydrate bite point is, say, for example, 33%, and you're eating 34%, you will not lose weight. And you get down to 32% and the weight will fall off you. It's a very finite balance. And they know that as well with kids with, the ketogenic diet for epilepsy. They eat one peanut, it can just cause a fit. So it can be really, and not everybody's as sensitive as that, but some people are now because we're just living in this processed world, and the body just doesn't know what to do, and it can react very quickly to stimuli.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's knowing what your bite point is, so that you can understand how to get down under that. And then, because the problem is in the West that a lot of the fat we store is toxins. When you're in the kind of in the jungle in Africa and people are round, it's a great sign. They want to be fat, but they're eating a lot of starchy carbohydrates, so it's literally just stored energy. There's no toxic crap in it. So it's a very different kind of fat than what we're getting in the West because of the pollution. And the other thing, obviously, we need to talk about is stress, because I bet when you were running your company, how did anybody talk about stress then?
Well, not really. Not in the way that people talk about it now. I mean, you can't run a company with, several hundred employees and not have some stress, especially if you're the owner of a company, because if it's not making good headway, then that is very stressful. So yes, but it wasn't so obvious then, Lilia, and I became to realize that well, what is it that's causing me this need? I mean, I would relax at night with a glass of wine or something, which was a stress relieval situation, and go away just to grind down at the end of the day. But I now absolutely realize just how harmful stress is, and it's invisible. And just learning some of your breathing exercises have been pivotal and can take you back into the parasympathetic mental condition, which is the relaxation mode. In fact, I heard on that subject, just talking to yourself, which I sometimes do, tells your body indirectly that you must be relaxed because you're having a chat. So I thought that was rather good. And chewing gum probably does the same thing. So I don't know. I'm not advocating chewing gum. I'm just saying these are little tips. So I do some breathing last thing at night, and I find that really helpful. And I get into a routine, and now I fall asleep pretty darn quickly, and really chuffed about that.
Yes, I mean, I'm obviously seeing that. We're seeing so many people with gut issues and chronic fatigue, and really feeling very low, because they just don't have the petrol to run their lives anymore. And stress is, it's the chicken and the egg. What comes first? I always say to people when I was doing my nutritional healing diploma, they were, we burn a lot of fat when we're stressed. So, I would always recommend a good omega-3, great for the hormones, for synthesis of vitamin D. And if you're going to be doing something incredibly stressful, you would up your dosage because you're going to burn more
Mm,
oil.
mm,
So, and if you don't, obviously you can become depleted, and that depletion can make you anxious and down and low and cloudy. So, but with all the dysbiosis that we're seeing in people's digestive systems now, and young people as well having real issues because, and the other thing I was thinking about is the air fryer. I love the air fryer; it's so handy. But I'm like, really, are we going to find out that it destroys all the nutrition in food as well, the way we found out about the microwave? Because this is what we're doing. I spoke to somebody who was saying that their brother had healed from Crohn's, severe case of Crohn's. He went in the macrobiotic diet, and you have to cook your food over a real flame. That's part of it. And the difference between radiant heat and convected heat. Even a fire, we used to all have fires in our homes, so that radiant heat cleanses the aura like a candle does, whereas convected heat's very different on the body. So not that convected heat's going to kill you, but it's just another straw on the camel's back, eventually the body's just like going, right, this
Yeah.
is not meant to do things.
But the other thing that causes a different type of stress, so I'm thinking, is that sugar is so addictive, and if your energy supply is primarily carbohydrate led, snacks and so on, every time you run out, the body runs out of that fuel very quickly. You get a real buzz in the brain. I need more carbohydrates. So it's a real dopamine issue. And then you take the carbohydrate, you have a bit of chocolate, you have biscuits or whatever you have, cake, and then your sugar levels return. You say, I feel better, that's so good. And then it starts all over again. If you are in fat burning mode, which happens overnight painlessly, then you've got, basically, in some cases, some of us have got months of fuel lined up here waiting to be used, and you just don't get hungry, and that sliding into that state where you can seamlessly, purposely switch between eating a carbohydrate meal and say, okay, I'm going to swing over to eating proteins, meat and fish, eggs, butter, and things like that, and cruciferous vegetables. If you can do that consciously, you find that you then not hungry. You can go for much longer. And my one dietary advice for anyone who wants to start on this trail is the very first meal of the day, whether it's actually breakfast or whether it's brunch or whatever you call it, if you can avoid eating any carbohydrates, and that includes porridge, and it includes toast, and it includes biscuits and fresh orange juice, which everyone tells you drink it, it's so healthy. It's not. It's absolutely it's a death knell for anyone that's on anyone that's getting a bit sugary on type 2 soon. So if you can avoid eating carbohydrates at breakfast, you will continue fat burning and losing weight right through till your first meal of the day. And that's one of the most helpful tips I ever picked up. I thought, really, this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. When I did the ketogenic when I was living in Malta,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe how my muscle came up. The body fat went down, and I actually had a six pack for the first time in my life. I was like, my God, not even really doing, I mean, I was doing a lot of walking because I lived up on a hill, but not doing any weights or anything like that. It's so fascinating the body respond,
Yeah.
to the yeah, so I think, and the other interesting thing that happened this week was we had the thermographer in, and we're the only place in Scotland, obviously, where that you can get thermography done. And for those of you that maybe don't know what that is, it's a way of testing it that's not a mammogram or a scan, and it's done on the heat of the body, and they take these kind of photographs, and it picks up heat. You sit in the room for 15 minutes, you adjust to the room temperature, and then they can see areas that are getting hotter, and that can give a really good indication of incoming. Now, I was under the impression that the reason people were going for thermography was because they didn't want read any kind of scan that could possibly do any harm. But in actual fact, it turns out 80% of the people that are having these scans are doing it for prevention, because they can see things before they get to the cancerous stage. They can see that the area is starting to heat up, and then they can tell you what to eat and supplement to avoid it. And I was like, that's a phenomenal idea. So I'm going to be talking to the woman who created that, who had breast cancer herself, and that's how a lot of these things come about because of your own personal experience, and you think, right, I need to tell other people about this, like you did with the Health Hub, because you discovered the biotherapies.
Yes. The thermography is really interesting and useful, and it works on the infrared profile that the body gives off, and you can see hot zones around the eyes and things like that, obvious things. But also some women have breast cysts, and they're not actually cancerous. They're cysts. They might turn into cancers at some point, but you can see these and identify them, and there are, as you were saying, Lilia, things you can then do. One of them, for example, is a lot of times we're short of iodine, and when you add iodine to a woman's diet, sensible amount, maybe with doctor's advice, but when you do that, a lot of times these cysts just clear up almost miraculously. So you can get some hints from that, and the other thing on thermography, it definitely is no non-ionizing radiation. So that's a big attractive, because if you're called to have one every year, and you want some reassurance, and you're a 30-year-old woman, you don't want to be having an X-ray mammogram, which is painful apart from anything else, every year of your life for the next 40 years. So I think the thermography is a great alternative, and certainly supportive of other things that you might need a mammogram later, but certainly very good.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about prevention, because somebody said to me yesterday, "You're looking fantastic. Are you using all this stuff in here?" And I was like, "Obviously."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's this, like, the biotherapies aren't just for, obviously we are very keen and passionate about helping people that are unwell, and we know that the biotherapies can really help give people energy back, and we can speed up the recovery and the healing process, and we've seen that, and we see it regularly. But in terms of prevention, which is, we usually like to wait for the massive wake-up call. As Joe Dispenza always says, don't wait for the dark night of the soul. Take steps now. And I think you're probably more likely to, it's once you get older, you start thinking, right, I need to start looking after my body, because I don't want my kids to have to look after it for me. Especially when you can't really trust your kids. So you think, right, I want to be able to do as much as I possibly can do, right up into my D-Day.
Yeah.
Ordered a heart attack over and out. That's
Yeah.
for me.
Die young at an old age.
Yes, exactly. And I think, we know that this thing that we call aging, we're aging in a way we just simply don't have to age. And I think what's brilliant about the biotherapies is, for people, I always say, if once you start to get a little bit of energy, you can make better choices. Because the reality is, when you're down here, your thinking's low, you're in apathy and grief and fear, then you're not going to make the great choices that perhaps you have to make in order to dig yourself out of the hole. And that's what I love about the biotherapies. You can come and gently energize the body. You can do the hyperbaric, you can do the red light and the PEMF. You don't even need to go on the EWOT at first. Just start to give the body that energy, and then we can start to lift people out of these really kind of heavy issues, as well as the prevention, and obviously the sports and the sports rehab side of it.
Yeah.
Have you got to add to that?
Yeah, well, I suppose everyone feels more inclined to go out and do healthy things if they've got a bit more energy. And one of the things that the biotherapies at the Hub do, they don't require an awful lot of input. I mean, two of them, one of them you're sitting or lying, the other one you're in the red light, you're lying down typically. And then the oxygen, you can be sitting down and enjoying the hyperbaric, or you might be doing gentle exercise at your own limit, your own desired speed on a treadmill, and breathing pure oxygen. And that is so energizing and so innovating, and it just makes you feel just the same as a sunny day does. Look, I feel good. I think I'll go out and I'll do some gardening or something. So it's these incremental steps that we find. I've noticed people leading on from one thing to another, and people are often surprised. Things we've got, one gentleman who uses the sit-on stationary bicycle for his exercise, and he went from being able to only do a little pedaling to being able to pedal for 10-15 minutes. So this is an amazing change, and it happens relatively quickly. And just because we've restored some of the energy at the mitochondrial cellular level, and the cellular level is what we're all interested in, of course, it does make a difference what the cells are actually made of. So what we're made of is what we eat. So if we eat rubbish, replacing our cells with products, and I'm thinking of oils and proteins that might not be the best for what we need. And I'm thinking now about cell membranes, which is the living brain of the cell, even beyond what a mitochondria does. And the membrane is what interfaces with the outside world for a cell. And we're no different. We're a large version of an individual cell. We've got 50 million of these cells in us, and collectively they all add up to being us. So we've got 50 million of those, and some of them say, well, let's all be muscle cells, and some of them say we'll be brain cells, bone cells, and so on. So they are specialists, and we, as a nation, as a society, we're specialists as well. We have people who are doctors, and we have people who are dentists, and we have people who are politicians, and so on. And so all the different needs of society are met by this specialization. But a cell can't work properly if the membrane is not made of a decent natural fat. And so natural fats, which tend to be animal fats or coconut oil or something like that, are the ideal building block. So they're perfect. Whereas some of the other seed oils and things, they are very easily oxidized, especially during cooking, but equally in the production of energy in the cell. So if these oils are built into your cell membrane, it's a battery, and it doesn't work so well. So it doesn't control what goes in and what comes out. So it's a complicated picture. But basically, if we do some simple things, we can help the body over time. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to take a couple of years to rebuild your body with the cells and the materials that it actually enjoys, and actually help it work well.
I know, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, it doesn't take us 2 days to get sick, so it's not going to take like one or two superhumans to get well again. We need to, and some bodies respond quicker. I mean, we see that, and I think that's the memberships are really starting to grow now, because most people that come understand that is that you're tending your garden. You can't go away for 2 years and forget about it. It needs that constant attention, not like fanatical. Maybe you have to be very strict at first when you're trying to get back onto your feet and give the immune system, the best chance. But, just slowly, little things every day really help. And getting people to look at that more like 12 months to 24 months, where, you really can make it a way of life. I call it the energy gym. You come to get energy. You don't come to use it all up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is a slow process, but it's about making small changes, and what we eat is considering, taking a step back and saying, well, what am I eating, is a very valuable exercise. Read the labels, look at all the things. Some people say don't eat food with a label on it, just because the moment you've got more than 3 ingredients on it, you've got something there that perhaps isn't going to do you a button of good. So it's worth doing that. And eating fresh produce is obviously better than eating processed foods. A little exercise is wonderful. Getting good sleep is important, because that's when we repair ourselves. So if you're not sleeping well, that's something would absolutely work out what's going on there. And usually there's some methods of dealing with that. I've been doing an exercise at the moment for some people who have sleep apnea, and we're hoping to offer some equipment to help with that, because if you're under oxygenated overnight, it's not helping you at all. Your body just can't repair itself. And people notice a big difference if they do have sleep apnea. If you have in a partnership, possibly your partner will tell you, you know what, you stopped breathing for 3 minutes last night. I was getting quite concerned. So these are little telltale things. Don't let them just slip past. Follow them up, and there's things to do. We will, I think, be offering some help with the apnea products on our website, Health at Home, which is newly launched with some of our red light things. And hoping the plan is to make all of these technologies and therapies available to someone at home. And there's a little investment, but when you've got some of these wonderful things, like pulse magnetic therapy or something like that, it could be in your tool chest of fixes for not only just you, but your family and friends. So it's a really, really fantastic thing to have up your sleeve.
Get them all over the country. We want everybody to be able to access this, because there's people suffering right now. I'm talking about the cell membrane. We know the cell membrane responds to emotion and contracts and expands depending on what we're feeling. So that's having an impact on absorption as well, and that's having an impact on how dark or light we feel. So that we can't separate any systems. what we think, feel, say, do, believe, perceive is all impacting. And a lot of the time I'm really working with people is to start, I say, right, get your phone out. Where are we going? We're going to pain-free, high energy. We start talking about where we want to go rather than where we've been, and focusing back on how difficult every day is. And so the language, the words that we're using, the feelings around it, the passion that we have around the anger and the rage we have at the body because we can't do. So many people say to me, I just want my life back. And that we really need to start working with the body rather than against it. It's not, it's obeying us. It's
Yeah.
just that we really
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Well, Lilia, you've been very over many years now, very successful at getting people on the right wavelength and bringing them to mind what they're thinking, and how their thinking influences the outcome of any health decisions, and it's so important. And I'm increasingly becoming aware of these the softer side of therapies, and in conjunction with energy therapies like we have the biotherapies at the hub. The combination of what you do, Lilia, and the biotherapies, which are energy therapies, are adding oxygen. Every cell in the body needs oxygen for energize it, to make energy. And the red light helps everything and everybody. And I was just reading today how the melatonin that we make with a red light comes on us, whether it's sunshine or whatever, is so important and can even affect the way cancers metabolize sugars, or glutamate, which are the main foods of cancer. So this is a very exciting discovery. Every one of our modalities can improve cellular health and reduce reactive oxygen species and improve the energy. So it's a great start, and then the rest of the life challenges that you can think of, and there's lots to go at, and a bit of wild swimming here and there and things like that.
The other thing that I've been doing is putting people on the PEMF to help them let go, because it just made sense to me. I thought, you're not going to be able to hang on to the past if you're getting pulsed. I
Yeah,
was saying,
yeah,
I said, on the PEMF, we'll do, I said, in it, the
yeah,
past life,
yeah.
flooded, like, great.
I
But
like the expression. I like the expression that your past is not your future, and some people go, "God, that's right. I never thought of that." And it's true. Every day of it's true. Tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life, so you might as well have some fun. Journey of uncertain destination. Let's enjoy the journey.
well, I think that's as good for the night. If anybody watching this that's not been to visit us at the hub yet, please come and visit. Amazing memberships and support for you if you're struggling with your health, and if you live in an area where you can access that easily. We're starting to run sort of community days for people so that we can get everybody together, because it's got to be about people supporting people. And very often it's really helpful if other people are going through the same thing as you. They understand, because so much of chronic fatigue is invisible. People think, even say, you look fine, you look great. And that can make things even worse when you're feeling so depleted. So anyway, yeah, come and visit us. We do free discovery calls. We've got the Health at Home website now to get some of this amazing stuff into your home, your community, your business. So have a look on there. And if you need any advice or anything, come for a tour or a free discovery call, and we hope to see you at the hub really soon. Okay.
Fantastic. We love your feedback, however it comes. A little mention is just fantastic. And apart from anything else, it tells other people that there's some things that can be done, because a lot of people don't know where to turn, and getting appointments now for a prescription doesn't seem to have the attraction that it used to have years ago. So yeah, there's a lot to learn, and taking control of our own health is so energizing and so important. So do come and see us, as Lilia says.
Okay, guys, any questions, just pop them in the box and we'll get back to you. Thank you, and sleep well, sweet dreams.
Cheers.